All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Orange Crush podcast in the first edition of the Aftermath for 2025. At Clemson falls 17-10 on Saturday night against LSU. A offseason of praise, media darling, whatever you want to call it. Feels like it's crashed and burned in 3 hours, and I think that's the beauty of football as well. But David, a really flat night offensively is going to define this group moving forward. We have plenty of thoughts, so I just want to open up to you, and you can deliver your opening monologue on just what went wrong last night, and then we'll dive into the specifics.
Yeah, it was so bad. I actually came home and put on my Indianapolis Clowns hat, which is one of Hank Aaron's former teams from back in the 50s that I pick up at Cooperstown every year. But yeah, so many expectations heading into that game. And how about that crowd? Did that crowd bring it? They were there early. They were loud early. They really supported the defense. Man, that's Death Valley like it's supposed to be. I love kind of the nuances with the game presentation that they added. So the fans did their job. They showed up. They showed out. I thought that the defense was good enough. Tom Allin, this is their first time to get some stuff on game tape. And now they have some stuff to build off of. Stafile and Green played really well after getting the start at defensive tackle. Ronan Hannafin, 12 tackles. Sammy Brown, 11 tackles. Wade Woodaz maybe got caught up in the wash a little too much in the first half, played better in the second half. All good, but that offense was offensive. It was not good. And now you sit here and you look at it and you go, man, against good competition, except for that second half against Texas, Garrett Riley's offenses have just not been good against elite competition. They just haven't. And now this is a grand total of, I think, 20 points in 3 season openers.
Yeah, it's 20. It was 20-6, 13, 34-3, and 17-10. So it's about close. It's 19, but overall in the last 3 openers, you just had a team that sort of come out flat in various different ways. The Georgia game, completely nothing. Duke, you had drives, but at the end of the day, turnovers were the killer. And I think what's really, alarming and interesting is that I think if you had told both of us before kickoff that Clemson's defense will hold LSU, an offense that flew across the yard and added some talent in the portal, they would be held to 17 points, and Clemson would win the turnover battle. I would ask, okay, how many points did Clemson win by, and how, is it more than 10 in that situation? So at the end of the day, I think Allen's defense, we've said this for a few weeks now, I think it's going to take some time for that identity to be shown of what Allen truly wants to do, and to their credit, they adjusted well the eye candy that LSU threw out. Rewatching some plays, there's emotion here, there's emotion there. They really tried to test Clemson in a lot of different areas. And while they got him a few times, I think overall fans should be pleased. And maybe we could treat this like a movie review. I think we should probably start with the things, probably the negatives, and then I think we probably close with the positive. I think that's what people really want to hear is what went wrong. I think we should probably start with Garrett Riley, David, and just the play calling on that side of the ball felt like early on, and this is mind-boggling. Clemson's running backs carried a total of 9 times last night for a total of 20 yards. And I think Adam Randall touched the ball once after that goal line touchdown where he had that second effort and Clemson started to gather some momentum. But once again, we talked about how Clemson's run game just had to be adequate because it had to give defenses a look, keep them honest, and keep them from being one-dimensional. But at the same time, it felt like the run, and Sweeney said this last night, the run game was too quickly abandoned. And Brian Kelly said when that offense is one-dimensional, it's really easy to dial up defenses. And I'm sure for Blake Baker, when you were rushing 7 at Klubnik, you know your corners can win on the boundaries. And there was a lot of times where balls were swatted down. TJ Moore, Wesco, and with Williams out, obviously, it makes it easier for that LSU secondary. But, man, it felt like LSU defensively put Clemson's offense in the blender.
And that really, and a lot of that's on Kate Klubnik because if you're rushing 6 or 7, somebody's open.
Tyler Brown was.
He has that tendency to, to flush right and panic, and that's what happened. LSU was content to rush 6 or 7, play tight man underneath. 3-3-5, you got to be able to run against it. I go back to, because I've been doing this so long, there was a game against South Carolina back during the 5-game streak where Clemson was running the football at almost a 7-yard per carry clip against the Gamecocks. And then for whatever reason, Chad Morris forgot that handing the ball to a running back existed. And after the game, asked him about it. And he was like, no, we didn't abandon the run. And I showed him, the play sheet where they passed it 26 consecutive times to let Jadeveon Clowney go wild after averaging, almost 7. And I don't know, as play callers, to me, I would be, when did I run last? 5 carries for a running back. And look, we've heard, you and I haven't been able to see. Let's just put that out there. We get to see stretching periods, special teams periods, and then maybe somebody catch a ball out of the backfield. We don't get to see good on good. We don't get to see scrimmages. We don't get to see that part of practice, right? So everything that we hear about Adam Randall, running backs, has to kind of be secondhand. What the players tell us in their interviews or what the coaches say, right? Is Adam Randall the answer? I don't know. I don't know. I truly don't. I feel like Clemson needs a running back at running back. And you figure out how to get this run game going. Does that mean David Eziamume? Does that mean Gideon Davidson, who kind of came in for a play early as a decoy? I don't know. I'm not at practice. I don't know what needs to happen there. I just know that what happened with Joe Sloan and that LSU offense in the second half was a masterclass in how to play call. Realized pretty quickly Clemson's defense had made adjustments. In fact, Clemson only gave up 2.1 yards per rush after the half, right? So Clemson's defense starting to get pressure. So all of a sudden, he did what Georgia did last year. Quick game, throws to the boundary, screens, a lot of motion, orbit motion, misdirection. Throw here, get a ball out to a playmaker in the flat, and let him go make a play. And Clemson's offense was, we're just going to line up 4 or 5 wide and let Cade run around and throw it out of bounds.
Lots of developing plays too, where you felt like when LSU was bringing the house, lots of play action, lots of plays that probably take way too long in that situation.
If for play action to work, you actually have to be able to run the football.
Yeah,
You have to respect the run, and I just don't get that either.
There was a sequence with LSU that was fascinating to me, and it felt like there's sometimes you just take a mental note. And I know Clemson's got it in their playbook because they've written it before with Riley, where they have these 3 wide receiver sets. You keep 2 up, and you have someone in the backfield, or not the backfield, excuse me, on the sideline, just kind of following your blockers, get 4 or 5 yards, but it makes it manageable on 2nd and 3rd down. And LSU ran that play, it felt like 3 times in a row in the 4th quarter on one of their scoring drives. And Nussmeier just makes it so easier, especially for a quarterback of his caliber, of just tossing it out there. He knows he's going to have pressure. He got wrecked by TJ Parker on the roughing the passer. Super tough kid, goes out there and makes it happen. But for Clemson, there were a couple of times where I felt like maybe they're starting to figure it out offensively, a couple sweep counters to TJ Moore. I like the idea of using Tyler Brown as sort of a gadget back and throwing him in the backfield and getting creative. Didn't see too many screens with Randall, which is what I kind of expected from him. Try to utilize that backfield space, especially since LSU's bringing so much pressure up the middle. Maybe there's a cross screen or maybe some sort of Texas route in there. There's just so many questions. And maybe there's this caveat that LSU's defense is just that freaking good. But at the same time, you look at Clemson's play calling and think they kind of did LSU a lot of favors last night with the way things were called. And one of the X factors you and I listed out, and I think this is the next kind of point to address, is Clemson's offensive line got beat up on Saturday night, particularly on the edges. LSU had a field day. I don't know if that's necessarily because the things were opened up or not, but it felt like early on, Tristan Lee was in a battle against LSU's pass rushers specifically, and they really just had a tough time protecting Klubnik.
They did, and you kind of wondered how it would all shake out. Colin Sadler over at left guard. Thought we might see a little bit more of Elijah Thurman than we did with Walker Parks out. He was in some at right guard in place of Harris Sewell. Just didn't really make a difference, that offensive line. And it looks bad too, because if you've only got 5 offensive linemen, right, and they're rushing 7, somebody's going to be wide open. And then I don't know if it was a designed kind of a release, but very early in the game, Adam Randall either didn't pick up the blitz or he released way too early. you've got to have help from your running backs. And that kind of goes back to, man, what's going on with these running backs in the running game? Cade wasn't getting a lot of help there either. He wasn't getting help from, he threw one really pretty pass over the shoulder of Bryant Wesco, dropped it in the bucket. Wesco drops it. TJ Moore, the LSU DBs were getting a little bit handsy at times, and Clemson's wide receivers just didn't fight through it. So you can't pin this on Cade. You can't pin it on Garrett Riley. You can't pin it on the receivers or the offensive line. You pin it on everybody. It was a top to bottom malfunction. Very early it started, and it just never got better. Here's the good news. LSU's got a bunch of dudes.
Ooh, no kidding.
Look at that team, and you go, that's a team that can win a national championship. I believe that. And you had a chance to go down and tie it late, as bad as you played. And that may be the best defense you see all year. That may be the best collection of offensive weapons you see all year. You were right there. But I go back to when Clemson lost at NC State a couple of years ago, and Dabo Swinney brought everybody back and did a reset. This team needs a reset right now, at least offensively. I don't know what that looks like. I truly don't.
Are we in a similar spot to, and I had written about this on TigerNet, just sort of with Cade's comments last night. You have an SEC opener, lots of excitement, maybe not as much as this year compared to the Georgia opener last year, but a team that needed, and I'd argue in certain cases, especially after the fact with hindsight being 2020, maybe Clemson needed this more than LSU, given what the ramifications are with a loss. So let's play the hypothetical out. Let's say Clemson wins the ACC. I think you make the playoffs, obviously, with the auto bid, but is Clemson in that upper tier that everyone considered them to be in the open? I don't think they are at the moment, and maybe things are different. Maybe you evolve, but Clemson could rattle off 6 straight, and I think a lot of fans back home, and fairly so, will go, is this team marginally better than they were last year? Is this a carbon copy of kind of the same formula where if they go next weekend into Troy and play with a lot of desperation, you'll be sitting here talking about, man, the offense looked better, but sure, it's a group of 5 Troy team that won 4 games last year. That's probably what should happen. So against LSU, you had that opportunity to sort of take that next step, and a step that these players and coaches had been hoping for, talking about, saying all the right things, of course. It makes it difficult to assess where this Clemson team truly will be, especially when the competition drops a significant notch below LSU. I agree with you. LSU, obviously, for all their faults, all their flaws over the last several years, they took a big boy step last night, and I'm sure Brian Kelly is the happiest man on the planet, given what the struggles of the Tigers in the last several openers.
Before we get back to this video, we'd like to thank the title sponsor for this podcast, Newton, Scott, and Associates. This team is headlined by Jeff Scott, former Clemson assistant coach and 2-time national champion, as well as Eric Newton, a longtime local and trusted real estate partner. These two are teaming up to provide a first-class experience for all Clemson fans. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, or build in the upstate area of South Carolina, you can trust Newton, Scott, and Associates. Choose the same team that Clemson coaches are selecting when they're looking to buy, sell, or build, all the way from Tigertown to Lake Kiowee. For more information, you can find them at newtonscottsc.com or by calling the number 864-722-9062. That's 864-722-9062. Now, let's get back to the video.
Yeah, I sit here and I look at it, and you had an entire summer, you had an entire August camp to prepare something offensively, and that's what you come up with. It just wasn't good. Cade got spooked and stayed spooked. He was in his head early. It didn't look like a third-year starter, looked like a first-year starter. There has to be a reset somewhere across the board to try and figure this thing out, because you do have a lot of season left, and this team can still get to where it wants to go, but man, there's just some things that need to be figured out. And where do you kind of go from here? Like, I don't know. Dabo Swinney's not a guy to push the panic button, right? Don't expect to change an offensive coordinator. Don't expect somebody to be, to be calling plays that's any different than Garrett Riley next week. Don't expect to change at running back. But something's got to change in there somewhere along the way. because this team's going to face good competition down the road. It seems like every time they face somebody with a pulse or somebody that wants to beat them lately, that other team does beat them. And that's a mentality. Thought maybe they were past it a little bit. It's apparent that they are not. So it's going to be kind of a tough week at practice. You go in today, you look at film. He's probably in a coach's meeting right now. We'll talk to him, see what he has to say. I think this Troy game is big. It's interesting. And maybe you let some of those younger guys who didn't get on the field, like a Jeremiah Alexander, let him play. Gideon Davidson, let him play. David Eziamume, let him play. Go out and run the football.
Talk about someone that needs more touches. Mr. Christian Bentanker, one who felt like he made a pretty nice move over the middle on a little in cut. Klubnik found him in stride, broke a tackle. And I was thinking there, I've been very high on 87 the entire offseason. Feel like you go look at the high school tape for sure. Reminds me of a younger Evan Ingram that can make plays in space. Is just a bigger body player. So obviously he slots in a tight end. But I think this is an opportunity next weekend for some of those younger players to build that momentum, because it does kind of feel similar to last year where some of the young bucks like Owesco and Moore provide a little bit of a spark and an urgency to this group when it needed it. Maybe there's that recipe again, but we keep harping back to it feels a lot like last year kind of vibe. And so obviously there's a little bit of a different feel, different pieces with guys like Will Heltz, who had a sack last night. Looked pretty good from what we were able to see. A lot of chips on that side of the ball, which is interesting. They really held up him and Parker for the most part up pretty well, but in design. But you have sort of the game plan. They executed it. And I think last night LSU was the better football team by a pretty wide margin. And if these two teams met 9 times out of 10 right now, based off what we've seen, and you'd be inclined to take LSU probably 85, 90% of the time.
Well, and how about this? I'll go another bright spot. How about Jack Smith, the punter? Averaged,
Not bad debut.
Had a 50-yarder when Clemson really needed it. So there were bright spots again. And this team has a chance to get better against Troy. That's what you should do. And you go down and face Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech will be 2-0. They have Gardner Webb this weekend after going out to Boulder, Colorado, and playing a really physical game against Colorado and beating them. So Georgia Tech will be 2-0. You go down to the flats at high noon. You come back for Syracuse. I think you have an open date, and then you got to go up to North Carolina to take on Bill Belichick and the Heels. So there's opportunities here for this team to get better. It's not elite competition. It's good competition, right? And you just go out and you get better. But I will go back to this. You can't do what you did against LSU or what you did last year and expect the narrative to change.
And there's a interesting situation here where you look conversely to a team down in Tallahassee that did a lot of
How about
talking.
Desmond? Yeah.
They talked it, and then they walked it, and then they jogged it, and then they full on sprinted down Alabama's defense for a pretty crucial statement. What it could potentially save Norvell's job down the road. It might have already in that sense where, man, I just kept thinking they're dominating the line of scrimmage, and it looked similar to LSU and Clemson last night where one team really brought it. And I'm not here to question Clemson's want or will at all, but LSU really took it to them on that side, on the line of scrimmage. And you felt like at halftime when it was 10-3, Clemson gets that turnover, felt like that was kind of the moment where, okay, this is where a great team would capitalize. You've been chasing for those moments. You got 2 turnovers. It's been a rock fight. Come out in the second half, at least put up 3, and you miss the field goal from Hooser right there. And it just kind of flips the momentum with LSU. And even still, and Sweeney had brought this up, to the defense's credit, they are the reason Clemson was able to get a chance at the end of the game to go try to tie things up. So I think if you're looking for the Tom Allen impressions, I think you probably scored at a B, maybe a B minus. It's close to that range. But overall, the offense, big fat F.
Yeah, and so I will put a bow on this with this. I've heard potential. Dabo talked about it. A couple players talked about it. Potential is still there. The potential. I go back to a guy by the name of Lefty Driesell. You may not be old enough to remember Lefty Driesell, but the great basketball coach at the University of Maryland. And he had a quote one time that said, potential gets you beat, Performance wins you games. It's time to stop talking about potential, and it's time to have performance and go win some games.
Time to win some games. They're going to get that opportunity next week against Troy, and then we'll move on to ACC play. And that Georgia Tech game, man, that's setting up to be a clash in Atlanta, and probably a pretty high-stakes game for the ACC championship standings as a whole. But guys, thank you for listening to this quick little aftermath podcast and what went wrong in Clemson's opening loss to LSU. Thank you to Newton Scott and Associates and Chick-fil-A for powering us through the season. Continue to power us through the season. Man, I can't wait to grab myself some Chick-fil-A this week. It has been a long journey to get us to the football season. We are finally here, but boy, am I hungry. But guys, thank you as always for tuning in. Subscribe for more. God bless y'all, and have a good one.